The NFL preseason is back in full form this week, and we have our biggest questions entering the pivotal week one of the preseason. Big for Dynasty owners. That and more this week on the Football Guys Dynasty Show. And Jordan, we start to see data points. Part of them are believable, part of them are not. But what are some of the key questions we have entering preseason this year?
I mean, we got to lead with Green Bay's wide receiver, and we were wondering who's going to replace Devontae Adams, and maybe it's going to be Romeo Doubs as a rookie. That's what it sounded like with some of the reports out there. I did find it funny that he got matched up with Jair Alexander this week, and Jair Alexander just put an absolute lockdown on that narrative. So I do think you have to be careful about these, and you do have to. It's nice to have more information, but you have to contextualize that, right? And even if you're in a situation where, hey, you think there's actually something to this, right? You should start from the base rate. You should start from the prior of their draft pedigree, of what you know about the player, and then move them from there, right? Don't start anew with thinking, oh, first round or day one, wide receiver one for Green Bay, right? You have to take it within the context of what he actually is as a player. And I think that's a good example. I've seen some trades involving him, which we'll talk about, but I think it's illustrative of the point, and a key for Dynasty.
Yeah, I think it's easy also when you see things on a loop on Twitter or social media where someone retweets it, another person retweets it, and you saw the same catch four times. It was one play in one training camp practice. And it can seemingly take over your timeline or take over your focus because it was retweeted by a number of resources. Maybe you commented on it, someone else commented on it, and it just gets passed around. It's like a wildfire. And I think Dobbs is a great example where the dialogue, and I liked him. I was the one that said this, Watson versus Dobbs back in May. This is more contested than the first round versus fourth round rookie draft cost. Like I was like, it should be way tighter than that. It's a void and maybe target, but it's definitely tighter. And so like you said, with priors, early pick in the second round, going to get a lot of tiebreakers. And to assume that Alan Lazard, Sammy Watkins, Randall Cobb, these are veterans. And to assume that they are just going to be speed bumps as Romeo Doubs continues on this Hall of Fame trajectory early on. In the first 2 years, a round four wide receiver is about 10% on hitting. And most of that's in year two, teaser. So is he on a good track? More so than some of these flame outs. We see these guys every once in a while, early day three, get cut. So he's avoided that. He doesn't seem like he's going to get cut. Right. But it just, wide receiver is really tough. It's really tough for early or production. The Jamar Chases, the Justin Jeffersons, Odell Beckhams, Randy Moss, we see this. But I just think the microwave society thing has got to stop a little bit because a good first year, and this is for a lot of them are round one or round two guys, is like top 45, top 50. That's a really nice starting point to their career. Positive sign trajectory. And even that, I think, should be considered a huge win. And yet now you have this pocket to cash out. You actually have opportunities and options now from Romeo Doubs. I mean, we're in these split drafts where it restarts at 301 here this week. I saw people lining up to take him 301, 302, 303. That means if we were redrafting, he might go round two in a straight up rookie draft right now.
Yeah, and I had a bunch of those. And it's funny because we talked about this at the time, I think, of like really trying to get myself to those picks so that way you can benefit from the additional information. I tried to move off of them. I didn't have a ton of success. I took them there because I thought, hey, listen, over the course of there wasn't players that I still like there. At that point, there weren't running backs that I liked. It was really day three running backs or him. And I said, you might as well try and take, try and land a lotto ticket, right? In terms of whether that's a value piece or whatever here over the next, month, and then we'll see from there. But I do think like it's, I've seen someone ask me him or Jahan Dotson. I think there's a clear right answer to that question, a clear right answer. And it's Jahan Dotson, right? Like it's 50%, I go back to 2000, it's 50.7% of the guys hit, for a top 24 seasonal finish from the first round. From the fourth round, it's 7.4%. I mean, even with the additional information that that Doubs is on a better track than the typical round 4 wide receiver, right, you still smash the first rounder, right? And just think about just going from the Christian Watson angle as well. I mean, he's 36.8%, right? Just in terms of just the base rate of that second round wide receiver compared to the 4th round wide receiver. So again, is he on a success track for a 4th round wide receiver? Probably. But again, I think it's really important to keep those numbers in mind and not to get too much certainty.
Because even if you double it, let's say you're over the moon. Yeah. Let's say you're, 3 degrees of separation related to Romeo Doubs. Like you're still like, even if you're doubling it, you're still below Christian Watson. See, that's what we're saying. Like, even if you say Watson, super overrated. He's also getting off to a slow start with the injuries. He's not getting the reps. September ain't happening for Christian Watson. So you lower him. What do you lower him to? 30? What are you raising Doubs to? 15? Mm-hmm. See where I'm going here. So you have to be really careful, like you said, priors and pedigree. And you can have concerns about one player and be very optimistic about another. It still doesn't necessarily make them even. So you have to be very careful. And wide receivers are just risky business. What I always say is round 1 guys, and then they better have an elite profile if they're not round 1. And you know what? Doubs is neither. So he could work out, but let's say, hasn't Lazard been a rousing success story from what his pedigree was? And he actually had a closer to elite profile. And he faded in the draft. Oh, is he a tight end? All this stuff. We're still waiting on him to have a good year. By fantasy terms, a good year. It might be this year, but we're still waiting. That's the point. And he's been a rousing success from his point. So it's a fascinating, I think, Kansas City, I think Green Bay. But in general, if you go with the profiles, I mean, Lazard's the front runner. Sammy Watkins is a wild card. Everybody else, let's see what happens. It's kind of how you have to view it. And Randall Cobb has been successful. Like, to assume that all these veterans are just going to move right out of the way for Christian Watson and Romeo Doubs to carry this thing. Be careful. Big Bob
with you.
He's been there too.
I realized I might have had a mic problem to start with, so I don't know if you can hear me better.
You're good.
All right, good.
You are all good. I love how we got in the chat, and I love this. Tuesday night, and just checking in to see if Jimmy G is still a 49er. Yes, he is.
He's still a 49er.
We are still in on this. Apparently, there is a Twitter account that
is
great. Like, is Jimmy Garoppolo a 49er? And it's like every day the tweet is yes.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. There's one person, I think her name's Rita Ora. She does a tweet segment about it's each day she does a different picture. So there's been some really good stuff. Like she recreated South Park, which George Kittle he was Cartman in it, and he actually changed his Twitter bio pic, like his profile pic on Twitter, to the pic that was used in that account. So it's like kind of caught on, and it's really super entertaining. I look every day.
Nice. Another one that I think is pretty key, because here we are fans of Darrell Williams. This is a pro Darrell Williams show. And recently, Arizona number two backup running back is Tea Leaves Eno Benjamin. Now, I'll believe it when I see it. This is a round 7 guy. This is a guy that had trouble beating out some nomadic and no-name guys, previous iterations of this Cardinals backfield. So he's going to have to prove it to me. But this is a valuable spot. This is James Conner potentially for the win, but we want the backup. Darrell Williams comes in there, feels like a pretty straightforward signing, weak depth chart otherwise, but there's a lot of buzz. And I think we're going to see, and this is the tea leaves that you read in preseason games, if Connor's on the bench, if Connor is on ice, who's actually going with the starters? Whatever starter reps there are, what's the split? Is it dramatic? Is it changing week over week? These are the types of things that can give us cues into what's going to happen week 1, because, Benjamin, he was out there in a lot of these split drafts. He was out there 3rd, 4th round. You can just pick him up. Darrell Williams, largely not available. But if Darrell Williams is the wrong answer, clearly he might be a cut by week 1 in some of these normal average depth rosters.
Yeah. Darrell Williams, I was just looking at this today because there's whether it's waiver wires or whether it's the split drafts, I'm in some too. And again, Benjamin in like the mid-3rd, you're looking around and you're like, all right, I need usable. I need something of use here, right? I just don't want to burn a roster spot or burn a pick on something not valuable. And you start looking around and you just sort of go down the list of potential backup running backs, and he's firmly on the list. So again, you're just taking a shot there, but available in some of these leagues, available on waiver wires, right? And I think you just got to kind of keep churning. I'm not cutting Darrell Williams yet, but I do think signs are pointing in a favorable direction for Eno Benjamin.
It's a monitor situation. And
Absolutely.
That's why, again, just because it's an incomplete, we don't know the answer, but we're getting signs of maybe conflicting information from what our assumptions are. And what we always say, stay liquid, stay mobile. And in the next 3 weeks, that's why you don't invest a lot, because you might be cutting some of these guys. You might really want to pick some up, and you have to create roster spots. Another one that I'm monitoring is Kansas City. Isaiah Pacheco is one of these names of the now. He's getting some first team reps. Rojo, Ronald Jones, has not had a lot of positive reports, but he is a veteran. He was a notable player in terms of his pedigree coming out of Tampa Bay, never quite reached expectations. Tom Brady didn't really trust him, especially in pass pro situations, but they brought in Jerick McKinnon. They don't have Darrell Williams anymore, but Isaiah Pacheco had that size and movement. He is a rookie. He barely got drafted. So it's a lot of moving pieces here. I think the assumption by almost everybody, Ronald Jones, back up to Clyde Edwards-Helaire on lock. This is another one. We need this confirmation. Otherwise, it's a little unsettled and it's an incomplete grade right now. Is Pacheco really rising, or is this them just rotating position, through the lines here as we go through training camp?
Right. And then you look at their depth chart that they release, and it's McKinnon at 2, and you're like, it's just like,
as if we buy that. We've been down this Jerick McKinnon running back 2 path before.
Right. Where have we been burned by this? Oh, when he was in Minnesota.
What year is this?
That's
It's 2015. I got to check the newspapers. That's when you're in the hospital and they go, do you know who the president is? Checking year. Quick year check. Jerick McKinnon is a vibrant running back 2 on a depth chart. You're like, well, it can't be 2015. 2022. I'm going to go with that.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, that's one. Again, I'm watching the Giants as well, in terms of what their backup situation looks like. It might be the backup quarterback situation there with them, but yeah, I mean, I just keep monitoring all these guys. And again, I think something that you said is important. Jordan, from 5 years ago, we keep having this conversation about things that have changed, but the back, is it third of your roster, quarter of your roster, depending on the size, should be very, very fluid with them, right? Very, listen, if Darrell Williams is buried as a 3, we like him, right? He won us titles in the past 2 years. Like, it's a player that we like. If he's not going to be useful to him, we got to move on, right? So I do think that is an important thing to think about as you're sort of churning through these things, right? Like, it's time to, cut bait on some of the players on your roster and really make an evaluation of, hey, how can they help me? And if the answer is if you can't come up with a quick answer to that question, it's time to be thinking about how to replace that spot.
Yeah, we've talked about roster management all the time, and it goes beyond looking for streamers, or cashing out on guys. It literally is, how many spots do you want liquid, and training yourself. I think we learned it, baptism by fire in FFPC. You just have a whole new threshold of what it takes to lock in a roster spot, because the waiver wire is vibrant, and all of a sudden it's not every backup running back. It's only the best ones that reserve a spot, and you pretty much say, you're with me. We're going to see how this whole season goes, like the Alexander Madison types, because there's going to be 5, 10, 15 of them on the waiver wire, the Matt Breidas of the world, that you just can't roster. You just can't find the spot. And yeah, you mentioned the Giants. I just keep going back. Like, are they really? I mean, I like Matt Breida as much as anybody. Are we really going to go into week 1 with Saquon Barkley, who's missed time the past couple of years, and Matt Breida is going to be your most logical answer? I don't know. Maybe they got Devonta Freeman on speed dial here yet again, or Latavius Murray, or I don't know. They might have something up their sleeve, but it doesn't seem like Matt Breida for 15 plus touches a week can actually be the plan.
Is it like Gary Brightwell or something? I mean, like,
that guy he's got no third gear. So that is jarring. Daniel Jones is the starting running back over Gary Brightwell. That was a scary addition by the Giants. I didn't know what they were doing there. That's like Ryan Nall. Let's get Ryan Nall in there.
Yeah.
Just to give a shout out.
Ryan Nall. Yes.
Exciting. Chad Parsons, Jordan McNamara, episode 115 of the Football Guys Dynasty Show. Want to remind you about the daily email update from Joe Bryant. These running back situations and training camp news, training camp reports for Football Guys, all this coming out into your inbox, all the links you need in the month of August and early September. This is what you need for the back end of your Dynasty teams. Don't be left out. You got to know when your waivers run, but you have to have the information so you know who you're cutting, know who you're picking up, and the daily email update. Sign up at the right side of the Football Guys homepage and get that done today. We got a couple questions from the chat that I wanted to mix in here in the middle part of the show. It's from Diego. He says, do you typically roster defense in your Dynasty leagues through the offseason, or do you prefer to use all your roster spots on end of bench players?
Outside of an exceptional circumstance, I typically try and roster as many end of bench guys. I've found that like it can be actually tough. If you get into the championship, there might be actually a disadvantage because you're not able to cut them and actually add someone at the end of the season. Like that's one thing that's I'll suffer through it. Right? Like I'll suffer through that, having that lack of roster spot and having to roster the defense. But yeah, I mean, typically once I can, unless it's an exceptional defense or something like that, I want to cut it, and then I'm going to stream it anyway. So I hold on to it through the offseason.
Yeah, I always find I'm a matchup guy, and if you don't roster one until the week before the season starts, then you can just go in with your same streaming mindset because you don't have allegiances. And that's why I always think, you go into especially redrafts and you draft one of the first defenses around 11 or something, that you have this stickiness to them that you frankly shouldn't be holding them if they're, defense 8 on the year and now they've got a tough matchup or a bye, and you hold them and you don't pick up somebody else, let's say, and just it can get really dicey because of that investment point mentally and tangibly. So I think you have to be really careful of that point. And frankly, Adam Harstead does a great series on streaming for kickers. We have a series during the end season on defenses as well. And his Franken kicker, for example, and I know this is a question about defense, but does as well or better, than some of the top options if you just had them all year. So, at least defenses don't get hurt and kickers do. But again, yeah, I don't roster till the very last minute. He mentioned, Keontae Ingram or Will Fuller, or just taking a shot on someone that you think has a chance. Will Fuller is a great name that, hey, let's see what happens. You can always cut him week 1. Cut him for your defense. Absolutely. That sounds terrific.
You can cut him next week, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
he's going to be out of time, but wait till he makes it through this whole stretch without an injury opening a pathway for him, because the last thing you want is for him to go someplace notable and you rostered, Dallas's defense. Oh, I had to have that lined up in early August. And someone in the chat also mentioned Devontae Booker still out there. He's a lingering name as well. Yeah, he was pretty good for the Giants in that committee role last year. Let's talk about some dynasty trades this week. Deshaun Watson. It's interesting, Jordan. I don't know what your gauge on the market was, but it seems like when the 6-game suspension, that 2-3 days before the appeal, it didn't really boost him into the top 10, that clarity. And then now it seems like we're back down. He's still very much affordable in the marketplace. This is a 1 quarterback trade, but he still seems like a pretty thriving value where you were pretty firm on being very aggressive. Like if you had a startup draft going, I mean, he's still going in the 2nd round, and yet you've said just privately, I think, that he's a 1st-round guy. Like the moment
I said
he
it last
playing,
week on the show. I thought
okay, there you go.
2 weeks ago. Yeah,
104. Is
that
what you said? 104, 105. Yeah,
104. If he's, if it's a 6-game suspension, that's totally appropriate.
Yeah. So this is FFPC 1 quarterback. So a little bit different environment. This team has Kyler Murray, Trey Lance, and Deshaun Watson before the trade. So that's a tough situation. You got 3 good quarterbacks, and frankly, Watson, that suspension doesn't make it so that you can go on IR, I don't believe, in FFPC. So that's tough to hold. Watson for Gabriel Davis and a 23 second.
I mean, not many quarterbacks go for more than
second plus.
Right? I mean, that's a decent return, especially when you're dealing from depth. I mean, I will say this about Watson. I have found, I think the difference between the startup draft market and the existing league market is maybe as wide as we see it. I'm writing a weekly piece leading up to the season about dynasty trading, and one of the observations in it this week, it should be out in the next couple of days, is is the Watson, either the person that has Watson in your league, right? The person that wanted him at the discount got him and is holding him. The people that didn't want Watson, or the owner, the GM that had Watson and was scared of the suspension, had already sold him. And so you're at a point where it's tough to buy the Watson share now, because it's in line with the expectation, and now the person is profiting, or feels like they're going to profit, right?
Unrealized gains, right?
Yeah, right. So I mean, I saw 3 firsts. I saw DeAndre Swift plus as an interesting way to get. But I mean, again, now we're not talking Mac Jones plus as a rookie pick proxy last year. That's not what we're talking about anymore. We're talking about elite difference-making assets that are now the price to pay. Again, and I've made multiple offers. I will pay more than you think's reasonable, and it's like, no, I want Dak Prescott in a first, and I was like, that's just no. But like, that's the type of responses you're getting, because the people that have Deshaun Watson are committed to Deshaun Watson at this point. So, that those, especially in Superflex, right? In Start One, the market's a little bit different because it's tough to get a sell candidate. I don't mind this, actually. I don't mind it, again. And if he's going to miss an extended period of time, like you're eating up a roster spot, at least make it someone that you can use. I don't mind it.
Yeah, because you can go with one quarterback, and I guess if Watson was your 2, you're technically going with one quarterback. But
right.
You will have that week where, at least 1 week, that you'll need somebody else probably, unless the bye and Watson's suspension work out perfectly. So, you could sit here and say, well, I think, Kyler might be the best cash of that. Well, that sounds great. But you also would still be carrying 2 quarterbacks, one with functionality. And it's just a tough situation, like holding suspended players, like especially Calvin Ridley. Oh my God. Like that, he's going to be older than people think. And not to turn this into Calvin Ridley, but if you're not able to put that type of player on the IR, it's really tough. And his market is rather weak. So it's just an example. And Deshaun Watson in a 1 quarterback could be a similar situation that just, this is not bad. Again, I don't know if I do it exactly like this, but like you said, getting a first for a quarterback in FFPC, or getting an auto start, like, oh, let me just flip over to a top 20 running back. That may be tough to get in FFPC. So, upside a wide receiver, a second, clear the roster spot, and go on with your business. And we've said it before. I mean, having 3-4 quarterbacks in a Start One is a recipe for disaster. And then your only way out is, it's going to seem like you're selling low on somebody, or you're just going to drop someone like Matt Ryan because he's unsellable. So neither way is really an optimal exit. It's just a matter of, how do I fix something that was suboptimal to begin with?
Yeah.
All right. Next one, stock PPR here. We've got Elijah Mitchell getting some buzz now. Oh, clear running back 1 in Shanahan we trust for Kadarius Toney, straight up.
It's a weird trade, right? I mean, my initial reaction to this was, it's a really weird trade because, again, it feels like you're selling a little bit low on a starting running back. That's the first thing. Was my initial reaction. Elijah Mitchell, by way of reference, over the past month, 808 in Superflex. Toney is 1002. So relatively close to each other in terms of where they're going. I think if I had Elijah Mitchell, I'd try for something more established than Kadarius Toney. Right? If I was trying to buy low on Kadarius Toney, or sort of invest in Kadarius Toney, I don't think I'd do it with a starting running back. That would sort of be that was my reaction to this trade.
Yeah, I have one orphan team that I really thought. I had Elijah Mitchell. I loved a lot of the other components to it, but I figured Mitchell, I'll be able to turn him into something else.
Tough.
Still waiting. Checks watch. It has not been an easy journey. So with Elijah Mitchell, I just really thought I'd have a lot of liquidity, a lot of options, because I refuse. Because even if I don't like him per se, you still can't sit here and go, oh, I'll just take a second in some marginal player. Like, you can't do that. Like, I was trying to step up, give me a first in some capacity, or get me, can I get to AJ Dillon, and maybe plus, can I get to a cornerstone wide receiver, even if they're 28, 29 years old? No. So here's the thing. if Mitchell gets work, even in week 1, you're going to have more options than you have today. I think people have the stink of last year. They have the optics of adding Tyrion Davis-Price. They still have Sermon. Jeff Wilson's getting pumped up a little bit. They talk about who is it? Jordan Mason? Is that the newest?
Yeah,
the newest Alfred Morris guy on the Shanahan depth chart there. But I just think all this is white noise. And if Mitchell healthy in week 1, probably the most bankable week he's healthy, that if he gets 18 touches, 20 touches, and the 49ers with Trey Lance or Jimmy Garoppolo are a highly successful offense, then I think you have a lot of options. You have more options than today. So the more and more, like we've said this a few times every year, and it seems like I'm thinking more in terms of this, of I might want to sell a guy, but ask yourself, I've explored reasonable options. I've been flexible. I've been malleable, but I haven't got something done. So I will ask a second time, is now the right time to sell? So I've been a lot more patient with, okay, I don't like this guy. He's like a stinky fish. I know I want to get rid of him. It's not my team. If Elijah Mitchell's on there, it's still not my team. But you have to know you can't just sell for table scraps. Just because they're like a target player for you, but you're still taking a big step down. I think you have to wait. I think you have to be patient.
Yeah, I'm just looking through the trade database right now, and there's I think you're right. Like, I think the play, if you're trying to sell Elijah Mitchell, like a lot of these are just taking losses.
Right. Or you got to go 2 for 1,
Tony
3 for 1 and use them. I mean, you add them on to stuff.
Right.
That's the only other play you have. I think going directly, or like you can't just go straight over to Zeke, or Dylan or Jacobs or something. I don't know. Maybe Jacobs is possible in play, but the point is, I just think you almost have to use him as a second piece to get something you really want. And maybe it's a little bit of an overpay, but you are consolidating and you are getting bang for your buck because you're getting that core guy that you trust. So,
yeah. I mean, like Sky Moore is kind of like the ceiling of anyone that I've seen over the past month, which, what's that? Like a late, like that's an early second, late first in rookie drafts. Like that's the best that he's gotten. And that's a lot. That's crazy in terms of when you're thinking about it. At that point, you just hold them, right? That would sort of be my thought.
Yeah, like I saw Christian Kirk and Darrell Henderson, and it's like you're going backup running back and a wide receiver that slots in where for you. Like you got to do better. You got to do better because Elijah Mitchell has some juice. He has shown something, and even if it gets murky, you still can have some clarified weeks and still, again, opportunities in the future to have a more clarified exit. So just be patient on that. All right. We got, and you like Kadarius Toney as a, let's see what we have here type player, but this is going about it backwards. This isn't going about it from, some lower level flip guy, or some pick that is not requisite for a first rounder that has shown something in year 1. You're coming at it from above. You're selling low and buying high, and that's the wrong equation, in which I thought made this an interesting trade.
I do think if there's one player in this deal that's going to change the course of like your dynasty team, I think the answer is Toney, right? Like I think Toney's more likely to be of a massive consequence than Elijah Mitchell is, but I think Elijah Mitchell's like a lot more likely to be in your lineup and
functional
and playing him, right? Like I think if we were just to sort of put percentages on, like a median for Elijah Mitchell's a lot better than Toney's median. A top 10% outcome for Kadarius Toney blows anything that Elijah Mitchell can offer out of the water, I think. So, but again, that's not how you make that bet.
Last trade of the week here, we got half PPR, 1 quarterback. We got David Montgomery and 112 for 101 this year.
You just take Hall, right? I mean, I like David Montgomery, but no one's particularly interested in him in the market. You reset the clock at a cost of a pick that's not super difference making from that range. And yeah, I think this is a really good trade.
Yeah. And again, that could work out. That could be Jahan Dotson. It could be James Cook. It could be, George Pickens, insert late first guy here. But 101, you just bank that. And half PPR really shifts towards running back. Non-PPR especially, but those are dinosaur formats. You don't really see those much anymore. But Montgomery, mid-career, do we think this season's going to go well in general? We've kind of struggled to see big ceiling from him. And I think that's the one big thing is if Montgomery had a big year, that can level this trade. But 101 and Breece Hall is going to have a lot of tiebreakers, 21 years old, big long runway that Montgomery just doesn't have time for. And he frankly might burn this year. And there was some talk, hey, watch out, because Khalil Herbert is one of the better backups in the NFL. What if this is more of a committee? So there's some variables there with Montgomery that isn't just plug and play. Oh, he's going to put up a top 15 season. Be careful.
Yeah, some craziness about him playing special teams and stuff. Just weird. Hey, do you make anything out of Josh Jacobs playing in the first preseason game?
No.
Okay.
Because you know what? Because everyone played. Everyone played. Yeah. And I do prescribe like this whole like put everybody on ice thing. I don't know. I think it's a fine line between you need some reps and you still have, again, a season-ending injury is a season-ending injury. But if you sustained a minor injury at this point, you could still be fine for week 1. So who's to say they're not, starting off with Jacobs getting X amount and he's going to get less next week and then none in the third game and then get ready for week 1. And here's the other thing. Do they really have a lot of incentive to, they didn't get pick of his 5th-year option. And this is it. This is the last year. If anything, I'm going to use reverse logic. Everyone's saying like, oh, they're just going to move on to Zamir White right now. Do we typically see that with running backs? If you're on a 1-year type deal, they use you up like a bar towel. So if anything, I don't know. And Zamir White, yeah, let's color him as the picture of health in his career. 2 significant knee injuries at Georgia. He's the one you would want to put on ice of all of them. So I think it's the big takeaway I had was Kenyon Drake. He may be, I mean, we didn't even mention it in the open, but he may be someone that goes from, oh, I'm for sure cutting him. I'm for sure keeping him back in April. And you may get to week 1 and be like, 24-man rosters, I don't know if I can squeeze that. I'm going to roster Eno Benjamin instead, for example, or some situation like that. Because if he's not a number 2, what is he?
I've seen him actually on some waiver wires and some split drafts. He was actually, in the late 3rd or late 4th round, he was in there. And I'm like, but when you do that calculus, it's pretty surprising. Right. Hey, I have a question for you. So can we discuss a trade that I didn't put on the show list, but I want to get your opinion.
Let's do it.
All right. So the trade is as follows: Justin Jefferson for George Pickens, Garrett Wilson, and a 2023 first. Did you get enough for Justin Jefferson? Let's just start with that.
No, next.
Okay. The second question is what is the mindset of the person trading away Justin Jefferson?
Yeah. Why do you hate your dynasty team? Well, George Pickens is hot. So that's a big part of it. Everyone loves future first. I don't know. It's the get cute. It's the get cute stuff. I mean, I don't even know what type of format it would need to be to justify that type of stuff. I don't know. We talk about a
person that comes in like that gets early picks. Like you're actually your incentive is to get paid because you're finishing in the top 4 picks instead of the top 4 places. Like,
right.
I mean, that seems like what the incentive is, right?
It must be. I don't know. Like for you to get Justin Jefferson in whatever capacity, startup trade, existing league trade, rookie draft, whatever. And here you go to the top of the mountain, then say, nah, no, I'll do it again. Pickens is just as good. And I banked a first.
Right.
Genius.
Crazy. I did the math on this. It's a 6th rounder, 10th rounder, and a future first for 108. It's like a catastrophic loss. Like you just like the only possible reason that I could think would make sense is like if you're like the worst team in the league and you're like, listen, the only thing that's gonna keep me from getting pick 1 is having Justin Jefferson, right? Like that would have to be the extent to which again, that's just a crazy thing for a receiver. Like that's not
to be fair, Justin Jefferson does have the upside to make it so that you don't get 101 this year, even if you're a bad team.
Right.
He has
to be super flex. Like it's impossible to do that. Right. It's like just trade your quarterback instead. Like just
trade for Deshaun Watson. Right. Who's your starter? Trade for Deshaun Watson instead.
Right. Or just don't play. Play your second quarterback. Just put a running back in the flex or a wide receiver in the super flex. You know what I mean? Like you just do. There's so many other ways to sort of think that. Just don't trade the best wide receiver in Dynasty.
Jordan, I almost had an aneurysm today. I was going over roster optimization and I randomly pulled up one of my leagues and I just started doing a dramatic reading of all the horrible roster spot usage. at wide receiver, these teams that have 12 wide receivers in a start 3 league, and the number of shots in the best case you squint and they're the wide receiver 3 for their own middling, poor passing game in the NFL. It's like, what are we doing here? And you recognize all the names.
Yeah.
It just blows my mind. So I could believe that too. And see, this is the thing. Like everyone, for every comment you get when you go, oh, that's a horrible offer. Like, stop wasting my time, jerk face. Yeah. For every comment like that, trades are accepted around the globe. It's like incredible. What you just said.
Right.
I mean,
how do you get to that deal? By the way, you'd be like, are you sitting there and be like, hey, now listen, I'm going to trade the Justin Jefferson guy, and I'm going to give him a prayer, a rosary bead, and a future pick, and he's going to give me Justin Jefferson.
No, that was the counter. No, that was the counter.
Yeah,
it started out as pick and plus, and he was like, "Give me a first too." He's like, "Done."
Right.
That's how the negotiation went. Okay.
Yeah. Do you view this if you're the Justin Jefferson? Like, I just got 3 firsts for Justin Jefferson. Is that how you're viewing? It's got to be how you're viewing.
It's got to be. Right? Yeah, and no non-quarterback and superflexes were 3 firsts.
I guess that's.
I mean, right?
Wouldn't it, like, if we could do this and it would be like, all right, let's turn, I don't know, Garrett Wilson into Keenan Allen or somewhat, you know what I mean? Like, or it's Mike Evans or like at least sort of
pair it all together, right?
Keep it like within the range of production and then try and arb it that way. You're in the worst way because you're going from super productive profile to rookie,
trying to do another Justin Jefferson like situation.
Right. And again, then you're going to take, that pick is probably going to be a receiver because that's this person values, and that's a suboptimal bet. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I'd rather do this if I was going to do this.
Well, if you do it that way, picks. You're at least what you're doing is you're extending the window before you could lose it. See, that's the good news about doing it that way. If it was Mike Evans at a first, you could still say that's horrible value.
Right.
But you can at least say there is within the range of outcomes that Mike Evans outscores Jefferson over a 2-year sample.
Correct.
And at least the loss doesn't come until you whiff on the pick or use it incorrectly. Evans is 31, Jefferson's thriving in 25 or 26.
Right.
And that's when the deal tidal waves over your head and drowns you. Yeah. But it didn't drown you right away. And the risk of this is, well, Steelers are horrible. They re-signed Deontay Johnson. Wide receiver 2 is the best case on a bad offense with no quarterback for now, for Pickens. And then you say, oh, well, and then Garrett Wilson isn't better than Elijah Moore, or maybe even Corey Davis this year. Zach Wilson's no good. I mean, you have the possibility to roll snake eyes on both of those things, and you better hit the razor edge of outcomes with that first, whether it's a trade or whatever.
Right.
Hey, maybe you can spin that first to add it on to something and maybe you get like a Justin Jefferson type in the future. Maybe you could trade all those 3 pieces for something like a little more stabilized in terms of a profile like Justin Jefferson.
Like Justin Jefferson.
Food for thought. Just an idea out there. All right. And that blends well with the it looks like that's in the conversation for dumbest thing you saw this week. So, but I wrote down for the dumbest thing I did this week. Last week, obviously, we talked about our middle-aged man bodies trying to scuttle at an offensive lineman's pace for the NFL. So that was our dumb thing we did the week before. But I had the dreaded task of changing cell phones last week. And I two times in 3 days, I had my touch screen like stop working, where I could not even reset the phone. I couldn't even, you do the slide across to turn it off and turn it back on. It wouldn't even work. Now, fortunately, both times it came back. But I was dreading this. I mean, I had a phone from the ice ages. And so, again, it was dumb that I worried about it because talk about how easy. I literally got the phone 2 days later, certified, used or whatever, from Verizon. Got it here. It started pairing with Bluetooth. I literally had the whole thing. I hardly had to put in any passwords. Everything just transfers right over. Everything. And within like 2 or 3 hours, I was using a new to me phone. That is a heck of a lot better because it's 4 or 5 iterations higher on the pecking order. But the last time I switched cell phones is an ordeal. It's like buying a car. You go down to the store. It's a big deal. You're there for hours. And I just, a few 10-minute transfers and like I was up and running. The hardest thing was switching over the phone service. But like it was so easy. I felt like an old person of like, oh, I'm so scared. And honestly, in retrospect, it was really dumb.
To be scared. That was the dumb thing that you did.
Yeah, the dumb thing was to dread it. And honestly, like I had, unless it flicked off and had issues like that, I still had no plans to replace it. But you get to a point where I can't have like the phone literally stop working for days at a time. And now I'm under their thumb, and I like, did you go to the store? Do you spend $900? You know, are you going to wait the 2 days? No communication, you know, so it gets dicey pretty quick, you know, but yeah, that was my, you know, just completely irrational moment or span of time of the week. All right.
Do I have to give my irrational span of time of the week?
You can. Sure. Go for it.
So I decided to travel. I decided to go for a bike ride in the middle of the day on Saturday. I was going to a concert with my wife and my parents. The temperature was 89 degrees when I started my ride. A humidity of 58. If you're wondering what that actually feels like, heat index of 98 degrees, and I rode 45 miles. I think I drank like 150 ounces of water on my bike, and I came.
Do you have
back
a camel pack, or do you have like 3 of the?
I have a couple of stop points
bottles
that I can add on to.
Oh, okay.
I think I did. It was like 140 to 160 ounces of water, and I came back actually weighing 5 pounds less than when I left.
So you still didn't drink enough?
I still didn't drink enough. And then I went to a concert, and I literally felt like a lobster just boiling as I was sitting there at the concert.
Your resting temperature just raises a half a degree, and people don't realize how much that is.
Right.
I
wanted
can't understand
fried dough, and I was on to put salt on the fried dough. Like that's what I needed.
There's so many people that I don't know how they get away with not drinking water.
Oh, it's
like
crazy.
They will sweat, they will exercise, but they operate on a completely different bandwidth of like, I go through, like I'm the type when it's same sort of thing, like this time of year in Florida, it's like 100, 100 plus heat index. And I'm going through like 3 shirts and like all this stuff. I'm going through multiple pairs of shorts and just sweating. Like I have to have a gallon of water with me and all this kind of stuff. And other people, it's like, they look like they're barely sweating.
Yeah.
And
Because they don't have any water in them.
Well, yeah, I heard it's not, like the more you sweat, like that's a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like sweating is a good thing. It means your whole system and process is working well. And if you don't sweat, I mean, that's when it's holding everything in. Like you just said, like you're like a raisin. There's nothing,
like
there's nothing to come out. Yeah.
Right.
It's like I cut, but nothing came out. Yeah. This is good. But I've always said, I don't know how you function, Jordan, but like if I'm doing errands or I'm doing something like in my regular clothes and it's unplanned sweating, I don't like it. But if you're okay, this is going to be athletic activity. I'm going into it knowing I'm going to pour sweat. I actually like it. But it's that you got regular clothes on and maybe you're loading the car after the store or something like that. And you got like the sweaty back going on. That's what I don't like.
Yeah.
No bueno.
Yeah.
All right.
The diaper bag really gets you on that.
That's what gets you.
the sweaty back.
Carting around.
Yes.
All right. Let's finish strong. We got a couple quotes from the Footballguys Dynasty Forum. It is back up. The Shark Pool is new and improved. So that maintenance period, thanks for your patience over there at footballguys.com, but it is back up and running for all of your Dynasty trading discussion over there. If you want to be included with the Dynasty trades you hear on this show or some quotes selected on a weekly basis, comes into handy during the season, especially. All right. I'm of the opinion that if James Robinson comes back 100%, jury's out on that it's a running back by committee with Travis Etienne.
I was actually surprised earlier today. I was looking at some of the ADP stuff for them. I saw firmly in the teens, Etienne, and in the running back 4, I think it was about 46, 48, something like that for James Robinson, which is a big split in terms of, I think, an uncertain situation. I found that pretty interesting. When you go over and look actually at the website, by the way, I was actually running, I meant to tell you this earlier in the show. I actually went and looked at our projections. We project Dobbs to be the wide receiver 4 in terms of his receptions, by the way. So if you're thinking about
right.
Yeah, if you're thinking about
Still
like, hey, huge impact early, like we have a tempered expectation for that. But circling back here to the issue at hand, which is the running back situation, we like Etienne for 170 carries and 52 receptions. James Robinson, 144 carries, 27 receptions. So almost, close to 2-1 on the receiving front. Well more than 2-1 on the receiving yards front, and a little bit more rushing for Etienne. So yeah, I mean, I think it's the difference making the consequential play is probably higher if either one of these guys gets hurt. I think they're both operate almost as like injury away guys to one another to an extent. But I do think that ETN has a pretty high ceiling here, something that James Robinson probably can't meet.
Yeah. One thing you said when you said he's like in the 45 to 50 range of running backs for James Robinson, I like when you get an established profile and yet they're middle of the pack in terms of backup running backs and the falling price of like it's a Latavius Murray theory that, previous starter guy that's shown something in the NFL and yet now they're committee or backup, where that's really where you get big time upside. And again, I think the other part is, if the comeback is 100%, that's a big if. And frankly, we hear all the time, it's that Y+1 that a lot of people want to accelerate it to the next year. But Saquon Barkley and others, it ends up being the following season. It's almost like they get a little baby red shirt, where they're playing, but they're not quite themselves. So it may be 2023 for James Robinson before he is 100% back into it. And that does, again, thinking about the timetable of things, James Robinson could be one of those guys that, not that he's a dynasty cut, but he's a pretty easy throw in or acquisition at points during the next 6 to 9 months. And you're able to get a strong discount, especially if Travis Etienne starts doing quality things with the starting role. Robinson can get left behind, and all of a sudden, he's a type that has a profile that you end up getting thrown into deals for the equivalency of a 3rd round, 4th round type pick equivalency. I know it sounds crazy because he's coming from NFL starter, round 1 valuation early on in his career, but play this out. If he's the backup, he doesn't quite look himself. Etienne's running with the lead job. How much would Robinson be going for in the trade market? So I always love those angles of, well, if I don't have a lot of ownership now, I may have a lot of shares of Robinson, comparatively speaking, next off season.
Yeah.
Last one, talking Saints. This year for Michael Thomas, Alvin Kamara, their residual value will start the steep decline, leaving Chris Olave as the primary asset.
For in terms of Michael Thomas and Jarvis Landry, was that?
Oh, no, that was Kamara and Thomas.
Oh, Kamara and Michael Thomas. I mean, all the reports on Michael Thomas has been pretty good. So I think if he plays to his capacity, he could be a riser in value. What you see at the point of Kamara is you basically trade a hit for basically a round to start evaluation, maybe 2. Again, he's gotten to a point where I'm fine with that, right? I mean, he has running back 1 in his range of outcomes. I'm fine with taking him where he's at. And you just know that roster spot is going to be one you're probably going to have to ride out, right? That's not going to be, right? You're trying to win with that roster spot. You're not trying to make a trade for a huge profit. And that's okay, right? There's different aspects of your roster and different aspects of your team that you should treat in different ways. And that's one of the things that I've learned in Dynasty is that don't be afraid to do that. Right? Don't be afraid to just, hey, listen, this is a good player, and I'm probably not going to be able to trade him for more than he's worth in terms of my lineup spot. And I'm okay with that, right? That's fine. So I do think that there's a place for that. And I think with Kamara, especially when you got a running back that's got running back 1 in his range of outcomes, I'm fine doing it.
Yeah, I go back and forth on Michael Thomas all the time. Like you'll look in some of the medical experts on Twitter be like, oh, there's a hitch. He's really leaning and favoring one side. These aren't 100% routes. It's a process. The point is, it's a process. We're still a month out. But the other part is, it's been a while since we've seen dominant Michael Thomas. And the one thing I keep going back to, I would love it if I have plenty of Thomas shares. So if he ends up being a wide receiver 1, that would be great news for me portfolio wise. But I mean, I don't think he had a lot to give, a lot of wiggle room. Like if he loses 10%, I just wonder if for him, that's a critical 10%. Julio a few years ago lost 10% and it didn't really affect him much. Calvin Johnson losing 10%. Some of these guys with a lot to lose, it's not really a big deal. Michael Thomas was, by NFL wide receiver standards, an average athlete, for his size and, playing bully ball. But what happens when bully ball becomes, it's literally the top of every single route. He was already a guy inside of 15 yards. Is he going to see as many accurate and the frequency of passes in this new version of the Saints with with Jameis Winston, but also Jarvis Landry functional. Chris Olave is probably going to have enough of a role. Even if you're skeptical, he provides far more than the Tre'Quan Smiths and, all these ancillary guys in previous iterations. They have places to go with the ball. So I don't know if just getting peppered with 10 targets a game with this new version of Thomas, the biggest decision I've had in months was a startup draft in a pretty interesting format, but I passed on Thomas just because I said the best case scenario for him in this best ball was probably 2 or 3 points per game better than the tight end I was considering with heavy premiums and stuff. And I was like, I'm taking on 29.x years old. Thomas's floor is crazy low, because if he doesn't produce almost to what he was before, he's going through the floor with the age aspect, the fact that there's no guarantee he's the go-ahead wide receiver one on his own team. And that's even if he's healthy. So I think there's so much risk with him. And I started questioning, is he really a guy that can put up a top 10 season? Is that really squinting through in his range of outcomes? And I don't know. So I took the safe way. I copped out, and went tight end route because I got a huge window with a player that I know is going to be at least within 2-3 points per game this year, even if Thomas plays well. So it was tough though. It felt like Thomas in the 40s of wide receiver position was like a no-brainer. And, I think it just takes analyzing the situation wholly. And this is different. If you have Thomas on an existing team, and you mentioned startup versus existing. I mean, you have him on an existing team, he's house money. House money. You just sit there. He might be great. I might have a guy that I project as a wide receiver 3 or 4 that's a wide receiver 1 or 2. But if he's not, who cares? Not much damage lost. Big difference.
And listen, if you're not willing to click the button for Michael Thomas in the 40s, you probably should click the button for Jarvis Landry in the 70s. Right? That should be, I think, the pivot that you make, right? A pivot across the position, and then take a bet. That's I think, right. If you don't think that Michael Thomas can do it, then Jarvis Landry is the perfect hedge to that, because he I think still is a player that some of the quote decline that we've seen from him as a fantasy prospect really wasn't production based on the field, signaling a decline in Jarvis Landry. It was a lot of other stuff going on around him and some volume concerns that I don't think were really him. So I think that Jarvis Landry is like the perfect hedge to, if you want to bet against Michael Thomas, bet on Jarvis Landry like 7 rounds later.
Fraction of a cost, exactly. Yeah. And there's probably going to be a winner. And you're either betting on a rookie or you're betting on one of those older wide receivers there of the Saints passing game. All right. In this episode, we discussed Michael Thomas here towards the end. Elijah Mitchell talked about some profiles, selling high or buying high in that capacity. Romeo Doubs there at the beginning of the show, a lot of things for the preseason. Enjoy the early data points here in the NFL preseason. All the teams will be in action by the time we have recorded next week. I am Chad Parsons. He is Jordan McNamara. And until next time, good luck